Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Cochrane, and I want to welcome you to Saturday Morning Tech. We're pretty early here in Honolulu, like normal. It is truly morning, but it's morning out on the West Coast too. We've got Rob Greenlee up on top this morning. Rob, you're normally on the other position, but good morning. How are you?
Doing great, Todd. It's great to be here this morning.
And new guest on the show. We've got and one that probably is well known to most folks. We've got Chris Pirillo taking up the bottom square in this Hollywood square type thing. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm awake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
is 9 a.m. normally an early hour for you?
Actually, I've been getting up earlier lately. I stayed up late last night. I've been watching Battlestar Galactica finally. All the episodes are on Netflix, and so I'm catching up and watching the whole series and stayed up late. I'm at the end of season or beginning of season 4 right now, so I'm in the home
Oh,
stretch.
It's funny how I go into those routines once in a while as well. I'll start a series I haven't watched in a while or want to watch all the way through, and the next thing you know, the whole weekend's gone. So
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, we did that with Lost. When Lost was on its last season, we watched the entire Lost series over a Christmas holiday. So I was quite losted out a couple of years ago. But really, it sucks you in, and you're like, man, did I really just do that? So, well,
Marathon TV run, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've done it before too, especially with some Showtime and HBO shows. I've done it in the past.
So
Yeah.
we were talking just before I hit the recorders here that I was talking about a buddy of mine had just bought a Volt, and he was sharing with me his experience. And Rob, what's kind of funny is he was getting about 50 miles a gallon with his Prius that he'd had for about 5 years, and so when he bought the new Volt, I was kind of like, well, why? You had a good luck with the Prius. Why did you switch to the Volt? And he basically said he was looking for a little more stylish vehicle, which the Volt is a little bit,
Yeah, it
and
is.
a change. And he was just, I think for more than anything, he wanted to buy it as an experiment. Now I think he paid about, oh my gosh, well, the list on it's like 45. So
Yeah, they are expensive. Yeah, definitely.
and I know he got about 10 grand on his trade in, but still, he's now trying to figure out where all the charging stations are, because it doesn't go as far as your Leaf does.
No, it doesn't. It's got about I think 2/3 of the battery capacity, or about a half, something like that. Yeah, I think it only has about a 40-mile range, something like that, on battery power.
Yeah, 40
Or-
on a good day. What he's
Yeah,
what
going
he's
downhill when it's flat, right?
yeah, and what he's finding is that he has two hills up and down, and where his Prius would charge the battery halfway down one of the big hills here in Honolulu on the H3, it doesn't even hardly make a dent in his battery life on the Volt. But
Hmm.
he's been able to drive about 28 to 32 miles before the motor kicks in. And that's
Hmm.
just about his actual commute one way. And
Oh,
so now he's trying to get the place where he's working at to put in a charging station. But
oh,
he's been,
charging station. Yeah.
yeah, so he's charging on 110 now, which takes about 10 hours. And normally that's a lot longer than most people are at work. So he's scratching his head a little bit. So I don't know if he's questioning his decision, but time will tell. I'm going to be keeping abreast of
Well,
how he does.
I guess my bigger question is, because I have the option to get, I've got a Prius. I lease cars, and leased my first Prius 5 back in 2010, or is it 2009? I got a 2010 model, so I'll be upgrading to potentially a 2013, and I have the option to go for the newer one, the electric one that you can plug in. But my question isn't so much, where to find charging stations. It's more how much money would I be spending at home, charging the car versus spending money on gasoline. Would I be spending more money, or does it kind of balance out at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a good question because I asked him the same thing. I said as soon as you plug that baby into your 110 because he doesn't have the 220 charging station yet. I said I want to see begin. I want this thing dead. I want you to charge it all the way, and I want you to tell me how many kilowatts you used to charge it. Because here in Hawaii, we're 32 cents, or actually 35 cents a kilowatt, and you guys probably in Seattle are maybe like 8 to 11 cents.
Yeah, I don't even think
It
we're that high. I think we're in the 6 to 7 range.
Yeah, it depends on hours, peak times, how much you've used. I started monitoring it when Microsoft had the Home project, and in conjunction with that, like a little, it was a band you could snap over your meter. I still have that running, although I don't know how accurate it was. I wish my home was a bit smarter than it was. But the nice thing about Washington Energy Services is that you could log into the website and they will tell you how much is being used in general. So they're actually monitoring like gas usage versus electricity versus everything all broken down. And it's been very very helpful to know. I think the biggest offender for us here is heat. That seems to drive up our costs substantially like this time of year. But then again, I'm used to it being cold.
Well, that's understandable. One thing that I've done here, because my power bill's gotten out of control, and I don't even run AC because I got good trade winds here, is that everything, I mean everything, has a switch. So in other words, if I have a power strip behind in the stereo system, I went and bought these basically smart power switches that shut all the plugs off, but the main two, when they're not running, I can actually switch those off with a little button that I can put in a location that's easy to get to, and that's helped on the phantom power stuff. So we'll see where his experience goes, and I'll keep you abreast of exactly what he's learning. But
Well, I can say with my experience with the Leaf, it's been fantastic. I mean, I don't pull into gas stations anymore. It costs me probably about a little over $1 to charge it, and I mean, because the reality is I don't use my whole battery to go back and forth to work, so it's really kind of a topping off.
Right.
So it only takes a couple of hours to actually top the car off, and it's ready to go in the morning again. And I just don't have to go to gas stations and fill up anymore. I mean, I drive about 42 miles each day. I'm up to about 11,000 miles on my Leaf right now. And, I really haven't had any problems with the car at all. It runs perfect. There's really no maintenance besides, rotating the tires. That's about it. And I've had a few
I'm sorry,
I've
Rob.
had a few, I've had a few software bug problems. But that's about it.
How much did it run you?
I paid about 33,000 for it.
That's reasonable.
see, 33 to 45, that's a big difference, That's
Yeah, and I also am getting a $7,500 tax credit, and plus I didn't have to pay any sales tax on the vehicle either.
Yeah, that must be.
How'd you work all that out?
That's if you buy an electric car here in the state of Washington, you don't have to pay any sales tax.
Oh, well, that makes wait. So would the new Prius count for that? I mean, it's not fully electric, but
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure those. I mean, I'm not sure if a plug-in hybrid qualifies or not. From what I understand, it's got to be a full electric vehicle, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question, Chris.
But that's a kind of deal that makes someone want to come to Washington State to buy an electric car versus because I'm paying.
Well,
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Also, I got a free 220 volt charger in my garage too. It's about $1,000 thing.
That's what I'm saying. It's like all those things that add up. That goes a long way to savings. Maybe I need to be looking into that, Rob, because we're kind of in the same area. Yeah. And honestly, I paid probably $1,000 for gas back in a couple of years ago. I think I paid a little bit more this year, but for a full year. I mean, I work at home. I don't do a lot of commuting, but the times that I do, it's nice to be able to save money.
My gas bill here is $5,000 a year.
Yeah, see, I'd be. I can't imagine. This is I.
Yeah,
can't
that's
imagine.
crazy. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to look into that. I mean, because I'm not much. I'm not a car geek at all, but I love technology. The Prius has been amazing for a few reasons. One, it's had a pretty nice GPS built in. Two, the cruise control has been a godsend. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen this type of cruise control, but a few cars have it where it's intelligent. You basically set it and then just let it determine how far away you are from the next vehicle, and it'll maintain either a constant speed or a relative speed based on the distance between your vehicle and the next one. So you always get an optimal mileage when driving, specifically with the cruise control on. I always use the cruise control because of that. It's amazing.
well,
That's great.
it definitely is an option here, and I'm definitely looking into it. So, yeah, I figured even if I just save my gas bill on one vehicle by half, it's a couple $100. That's worth the delta in the additional price for the car payment. Well, let me go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, let me just make one more comment. I'm seeing actually more and more people here, specifically even in the Seattle area, putting up solar panels on their roofs,
Right.
and actually charging their cars using solar power.
Seattle doesn't have that high efficiency
But
on
Well,
PV.
it's not so much.
you'd be surprised; it still works pretty well.
Yeah, and not just that. I'd be careful about putting anything on my roof that could potentially lead to leaks in the Seattle area for different
That's a
reasons.
good point, Chris.
I would just be. I don't care how much money I could save. I mean, I'd put the panels just about anywhere else. I'd rather lose a bit of yard to a panel than potentially expose. I've got to worry about moss enough as it is on the roof.
I talked to my accountant after I got my taxes back, and he says, "Dude, you just threw like 13 grand away." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, you just flushed $13,000 down the toilet." And I'm like, I don't get it. What do you mean? I had to pay taxes. And he says, "Well," he said, "you could have taken the some of your return money and gotten it back, and basically had PV on your roof." He says, as much you're paying in taxes, you could have essentially paid for a full system. And so I'm looking at it heavily here. I figured that based on being able to maximize my, the return money that you get from the Fed and the state here reimburses 25%, the Fed does 35%. So I figured I'll be able to get out for about $6,000 per system. And a system here, they qualify it in the state as anything with 16 panels. And that is enough really to reduce your electricity bill. Well, they give you about 500 kilowatts an hour. I mean, a month. And I really need to get to about the 11 or 1200 kilowatt mark to be at the, break even point. But 1 year, you can get all the tax subsidies, and then you put in a second system the second year, and you get the tax subsidies again. And there's some carryover a lot on the Fed, not on the state, because the state allows me to claim as much as $4,000. So we're going to make the push. But what we're finding is that the electric company here is starting to be impacted by so much PV going on. So they raised the rates specifically because their profit margin got cut because of PV. And they're trying to push through the legislature here because basically our power is regulated. I'm sure it is in Seattle too, but they're trying to limit the number of homes in Hawaii to 15% of homes in each power zone that can have photovoltaic. And after that, it'll be on a 1-by-1 basis. It pisses me off that they're actually going to be able to tell people they can't put PV on their home, but I'm not going to wait. I'm going to make the move, and my payback based on our power usage is about 3.5 years.
Wow, that's not bad at all, Chris.
I actually have to look up whether or not I can do anything with anything outside. I got to look up the homeowners association rules. I kind of bent the rules a couple of years ago when I repainted the house to be a bit more lively. I mean, it's not like purple and pink, shutters or anything, but the original color of the house was very drab, gray, green, I hesitate to go any further, but it was just a disgusting color that just brought you down. It was a depressing color, and ended up painting it like a Reese's peanut butter cup. So it's a very rich brown and a very rich cream and a very rich tan. And it's a much more it pops. The problem I ran into is the painters that I hired ended up using a glossy coat, which is great for the Pacific Northwest because it keeps moss away. It keeps the moisture out, and so it'll stand up to the elements better than a matte or a flat finish. It's just the only house in the neighborhood it's got a sheen to it, especially on sunnier days. But it really it stands out a bit, not too much, but. After that, I got a little letter from the housing association saying we've updated the rules, saying that you have to repaint. Everybody has to repaint their house the original color, and I'm like, but the people who the people who constructed the house originally watered down the paint. They were so cheap, which doesn't give me any good feelings, but. They were so cheap that the paint that they applied was watered down. So they saved money, but the paint was peeling in spots and exposing the siding. And I was just like, I got to do something. And I don't want to repaint it that color because it's just like, ugh. But I've got to go within a theme. And I really like richer colors with, in the Pacific Northwest, you've got to really consider color. And so I, in painting, go with colors that have like kind of a yellow undertone rather than like a reddish undertone because it brings it up, especially on grayer days, much like today. So I mean, there's a science to colors in there. I mean, to get geeky about colors there.
Well, let's switch topics here. I've got a couple of things in the stack today. I want to talk a little bit about YouTube a little later, but the first thing I really wanted to talk about was this app that's made some headlines here in the last 24 hours. They're calling it the Creepy app, but it's really was called Girls Around Me. And I tell you, I was looking at this app, and if I was a single guy, I'm thinking to myself, this would have been the app to have, but people have gotten wigged out about it, and they're trying to block it from doing what it's doing.
Wait a second. So let me get this straight. People who are checking in public places are freaked out about their privacy being violated.
Right. Isn't that quite
Right.
Isn't it ironic?
So, no, it's not ironic. Yeah. It's stupid. It's dumb. Stop checking in.
True.
Don't blame an app. Blame yourself. I'm sorry. Maybe this is the libertarian in me just screaming out. You idiot. Stop checking in.
It's true. Who do we blame? Do we blame the app or do we blame the phone? Yeah, we don't.
You blame yourself. Stop checking in. Oh, my God. People know where I am. Oh, my God. They know I'm not at home. Yeah. Well, why do they know you're not at home? Oh, because I just checked in somewhere else. Stop checking in. Doctor, it hurts when I poke my eye. Stop poking your eye. Sorry. Yeah, I'll blame the user every step of the way. It's the user's fault. I mean, I was saying this from the very beginning when everybody was talking, go Walla this and Bright Kite that and Foursquare this and Facebook check in that. I'm like, why? Why would you expose yourself in that way? Why? Unless there's an absolute reason to check in, I very rarely will. There's no reason. There's no true reason other than maybe getting a benefit. And then even when I do, I make sure it's private, just to people that I know. I mean, I would never check in like that on a public basis if I thought that my privacy was going to be violated. Ever.
I laugh because, we've all been telling, the audiences to, watch your privacy settings. You realize what you're doing is public. Realize that they're collecting data on you. This just should not come as a surprise.
Well, it's all about taking responsibility for what you're doing, right? I mean, not everything has to be public, and if you're logging into these apps, you're putting yourself out there, and everybody should just realize that. So don't get the app.
and don't get freaked out when you find out that there's an app out there that's helping guys hook up. It's not to be. I'm not surprised, and I think even the folks. I think there was an op-ed in the New York Times that was saying, "Hey, hello, wake up! You're putting yourself out there." So, but
Yeah.
in typical fashion, the folks at Facebook and all these other apps have locked out girls around me. So there's only 500,000 other apps out there that have the potential to be able to do so, or just go to the app itself. The app itself will tell you who's around me. Matter of fact, I think Foursquare, you've got the ability to push a little button on the app that says around me, and I think it actually tells you who's checked in around you. Now I don't know if they have to be a friend or not, but hello. So anyway, that's what we'll see. There's a lot of people upset about Facebook finally forcing everyone onto the timeline that has went down, and effective today, I guess everybody has mandatory timelines. I don't know. I guess it's their way of invoking a GUI change, but and I don't spend as much time on Facebook as I used to. But you hear any rumblings on your guys' side of the fence?
Yeah, I just don't think the whole timeline thing is that big of a deal. I mean, I don't spend any time trying to build it out.
It isn't a big deal. It's different, and people get upset when it's different. I mean, there hasn't been any shift in general usability on Facebook. If anything, it's been discoverability. I can tell you this though, my engagement with and I wouldn't even say my friends. I don't use Facebook to connect with friends. I seem to connect with everybody who isn't my friend. I do. In fact, I continuously pare down the amount of connection I make on Facebook. I really only want to connect with people I legitimately know or want to be connected to in some other way, like in a business capacity, or I have like a mutual admiration for they have an admiration for what I do, and I have an admiration for what they do. But my engagement increased when I shifted to the timeline and enabled subscriptions. I mean, almost, I would say, doubled. And so Facebook is been working better for me in that way.
What's interesting is I find that on Facebook I connect actually with friends and some fans, but where I really have most of my fan and audience engagement is Google Plus. I don't know. It's just like maybe it's because it's the techie crowd hangs out on Google Plus, and the family's on Facebook. So that's kind of where my mix of engagement is. And of course, I find I actually get more out of Google Plus from a topical standpoint than I do in Facebook.
I think so too, Todd. From a topical standpoint, sadly, I just don't see as much engagement happening on Google Plus. Someone equated Google Plus to a graveyard where there's a lot of bodies but no activity. And not to say that people aren't posting, they are. It's just that people aren't spending time on Google Plus, and it shows. It absolutely shows.
Yeah, I don't think they're on there as much, but I do find when they are on, the stuff is usually better.
Better is relative, but I mean, I can start a thread and get some pretty good conversation going, or share something really interesting. It just seems to me that the biggest accelerant for content on Google Plus is content that isn't yours. That is to say, you yank someone else's image and you share it as if it was your own, and you don't give credit to the person who originally created the image. So you're stealing. Not you. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but I'm just saying in general that seems to be what gets the highest level of engagement.
Well, watching between Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus, I think Google Plus, my people that have me in circles is around 15,000. My Twitter isn't that high. It's like maybe $5,000. I just don't spend much time on Twitter anymore than whatever I have on Facebook. But I definitely get more traffic from both Facebook and Twitter than I do, Google Plus and Twitter than I do from Facebook. I think it's largely because, again, the audience is a little different, and my family could care less about tech, whereas the folks on Google Plus do. So, I don't know, other folks have opposite traction points.
Yeah, it's funny. I spend probably more time on Twitter than I do on Facebook or Google Plus, and I just find that it's a good Twitter is a good two-way communication platform. It's really kind of an odd thing. It's like it's a little bit like an email platform for me, for people as far as with my podcast job. being able to talk to podcasters through it has been really, really effective for me.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be.
Hangouts? You mean the Hangouts?
No, he's saying on Twitter.
Oh, on Twitter. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were referring indirectly to being able to communicate by way of Hangouts.
No.
I don't know why I was thinking that. I was just thinking podcast. I mean, to me, it's like, well, there are a lot. The writing's on the wall for a lot of things with Google and Google Plus, but connecting with people and really getting to know them, it seems to work better when you can actually communicate with them directly. So whether that's by way of some kind of TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or Mumble server, or whether it's through something like a Google Plus Hangout, Twitter doesn't have that. I mean, I connect with people on Twitter, but I guess I've never really used it as and I just use a default Twitter app usually. I mean, this is the stream that's going on in the background. I've yet to find one app to rule them all, and I was never a fan of TweetDeck.
Yeah, and I think maybe my problem is I'm following too many people, and it's it just the stream moves too fast. I can't keep up with it. I think that's probably my issue with Twitter.
Yeah, so I use it based on keywords, and I can use it as a way. It's a kind of a one-to-many kind of email communication with people, and then also I can do private messages to people as well. So it's really kind of a dual thing. If I want to help a podcaster with something, I can do it kind of publicly, or I can do it privately. And so it's really kind of a useful thing for me.
Hey, back on the switching topics here, back on the 28th, there was, no Apple TV until 2013. And
wait, a mythical device. Okay, got it.
A mythical device.
I mean, but it's a rumor, and now people are upset again. God dang it!
I think there's a lot of anticipation for an actual Apple TV.
Just got an anticipation for jetpacks. It doesn't mean I'm going to get upset at companies for not making jetpacks. It's unrealistic. Sorry. Anyway, I have a big problem with people who spread rumors.
Plus, nobody really knows except for Apple executives. So I'm sure they're not going to tell anybody.
Oh my God. Oh, it drives me up the wall. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead. So,
looking at where they were in their latest release, their latest update to Apple TV, which I, was very, well, I guess for a better word, I was disappointed. And I said, well, the interface kind of looks like Netflix now, or a Voodoo, kind of remind me of the Voodoo interface from before. But, I think that they are, I think they've got a plan. I think that they're marching towards you look at the UI change, which apparently Steve Jobs had not approved or did not like before, but they moved forward with it anyway. So, it is what it is. But,
well, Steve Jobs didn't like other things and then ended up moving forward with them as well. So whether or not he liked it originally versus the new one, to me, the new interface makes more sense if you think of an Apple TV more like a conduit for content discovery.
Right.
And think of that Apple TV as just that. Every app is a channel.
Yep.
Whether it's HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, NBC, this program, that program, the other program. If there's a future for television, that's probably it.
I agree, and I was really chomping at the bit, hoping that they would open it up, and so that you could add apps from the iOS store. Now, with because once they do, let's be honest, we've had great success with the Roku Boxy. Well, not so much a Boxy. Real good success with Roku, Samsung Smart TV, and Google TV have been really just absolute hits from people being able to discover and do content consumption through the channels that we put up. And I'm calling them the same thing too, Chris. I'm calling them channels. So maybe it isn't the right way to call them apps, but ultimately I think Apple will call them apps when they open up the App Store to the Apple TV. But I was just hoping that they would do that. And I guess probably what's going to happen, my speculation is that if there is a Apple TV, that probably we won't get apps until an actual TV is released.
I don't know if Apple wants to get into the TV game. I mean, they might. I just don't see it. Apple TV is pretty affordable. It's easy to connect, and transform your current TV into a future TV. I just, it would be, they could do it. Other than talking and seeing it as scuttlebutt, I mean, I just don't see them getting into that game yet. I guess I haven't seen any prime indicators that yes, Apple's going to be moving that direction. I mean, what they have in Apple TV is working very well, extremely well, especially at the price point. Granted, a Roku, could cost. I mean, what is it, the purple one, like $50 or whatever?
Yeah.
So half the price of an Apple TV. Well, what you don't get with that is your iTunes connectivity, AirPlay, all these other benefits that Apple brings with its device ecosystem.
But what you do get with the Roku is 470 channels, and that's essentially what's on now from a channel perspective on the Roku.
But hang on, Todd. You can get YouTube, and to me, YouTube is TV. So it doesn't matter if your app, if it's not on YouTube, it doesn't exist.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Wow.
That's a big statement, Chris.
But think about it. Think about it for a second. What is the word? It's like if you're not on Google, you don't exist. If you have to reach a gigantic audience, they go to the web, they search for something. Where are they going to find it? Where's that video going to exist? There's one. What is it? The statistic was just updated this week. 1 hour. I think it's 1 hour. I'll have to dig it up, but it's some insane number. 1 hour of video is uploaded every second to YouTube. Not to say that most people would watch the video that's uploaded to YouTube. That's a completely different, topic. But the primary discovery vehicle for certain types of media is very, very important to keep your eye on. This is why it was so important that, and I knew this years ago when Microsoft released the Xbox 360 and started to kind of play around, with the idea of this hub, a central point for discovery. I'm like, oh, the writing's on the wall, dude. This is like the future DVR. And so I've been excited to see the recent rollouts of media channels on the Xbox 360. It's not a gaming machine. I mean, yes, it's a gaming machine, but to me, it's never been a gaming machine. This is why I've got like 5 of them. Because, sure, I can play DVDs. I didn't really do much with gaming. Well, now that, I've got a conduit to, important media channels, it transforms the experience. It allows me to, discover media, and it's already connected to the television. So the idea that, someone's going to publish a video to be discovered in a channel, more people are going to turn to YouTube or look for YouTube default rather than, it's got, 57 channels. I think the connectivity to YouTube is far more important than anything else. YouTube, it's YouTube. In people's minds, if you ask them, hey, where would you go? If you were going to look for video online, where would you go? And I bet 9 times out of 10, unless they are a freak of nature, they're going to answer YouTube.
That's an interesting point, because it's a segue into something I wanted to talk about today is what we're seeing. And, I basically, Chris, I work with a lot of content creators, and not all those guys, as a matter of fact, a large majority of them do not have this huge YouTube presence. Now, let me preface this in saying I've been trying to figure out for a long time this dynamic. And what the dynamic is you have really kind of like 2 types of content creators that I see out there right now. We've got the YouTubers who are there exclusively. Some do very well, some, don't do so well. And then you've got content creators like me that are there, but 99.5% of my audience doesn't consume the content on YouTube. I've never been able to figure it out. I've got this fantastically built audience that consumes the content a variety of different ways. Roku, Boxy, Samsung Smart TV, iPad, iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, you name it. They consume the content across the board on a variety of different devices, both the audio and the video, but yet they don't go to YouTube to watch the content. Now, maybe, and this is the only thing I can think of, is maybe folks, when they go to YouTube, are willing to watch a 10-minute video, but they're not going to watch an hour video. And that's what my stuff.
Okay, so It depends, right? It's like saying it's the same thing with Google Plus. Like nothing's happening there. Well, what are you doing there? Are you engaging? People say, "Well, I'm never getting comments on my blog." I'm like, "Are you commenting elsewhere? Do people know that you exist?" Part of the YouTube strategy is, I mean, it's just like with any community. It's community building. It's engagement. It's giving them a reason to watch, to tune in. I've had successes with doing live stuff on YouTube. I've had successes with just doing one-offs on YouTube. I've had successes, and I would say over the longer haul, creating, content and information and perspectives that are, relatively unique that ultimately draw people in. So it's being able to make that connection with people. This is one of the reasons why, even though I don't understand it, one of the reasons why I think vlogging is, it's so attractive because you're making a connection with another person. And it's like my wife said, to take that to another level, it's you're living vicariously through somebody else's eyes, or you're able to experience it in another way. And YouTube allows that kind of connectivity. So if there's a complete disconnect between, I wouldn't say a complete disconnect, if it's not matching a person's expectations, then there's no reason for it to be there, or it's not going to work.
So the question is, they're making the connection in other media locations. How come they're not making the connection on YouTube?
Well, it depends on your audience. So if your audience doesn't like YouTube at all, that might be why.
That's interesting.
The problem is, as Google continues to roll Google Plus out, the importance of YouTube, a presence on YouTube and a presence on Google Plus is going to become increasingly important. Google Plus is more like YouTube and Blogger than it is like Facebook. And with Google already, having patents discussing things like author rank and reputation, and them already coming out and saying, your identity is going to be tied to your Google Plus profile. For content creators, the writing's on the wall. Yes, it's important that you get your content in wherever you can to whoever wants to watch it. Whether that's through any kind of distribution channel, whether it's iTunes or Roku or any partner down the line. It's important to keep in mind that more people don't know who you are than do know who you are. And so that's why it's important to kind of go to where they are versus expecting they're going to come to you, especially if you're an unknown quantity.
Rob, we've talked about this a number of times before, and you and I have talked about this unique dynamic. And, and I think the telltale sign for me one time, and Chris, to your point, was we were talking with a fairly successful YouTuber. He claims, and it's been reported, that he probably makes in and around 6 figures a year on his YouTube channel, and he does some stuff. And then he basically told me, sitting in a session like this, we're actually in a hangout, he said, I said, well, why don't you go with those other distribution methods? Why don't you put yourself on iTunes? Why don't you put yourself on these other devices? And he said something that just kind of set me back in the seat. He said, why should I? I don't have to do that. YouTube's paying me. I'm doing my thing.
Exactly.
Why should I? And I said, that's kind of like, whoa.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's free bandwidth, free hosting, and they have pretty powerful tools for content providers that fits right into a lot of folks' needs. So I can totally see where a content provider looks at YouTube and says, this is quite a toolbox of stuff for me, and I don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. Where if you're a podcaster and you're trying to build an audience, there's a lot more kind of stuff you have to be worried about. You have to pay for your bandwidth. You have to be a lot more capable from a technical perspective. And I think that's oftentimes where the difference is between podcasters and folks on YouTube, is that it's that level of, it's the expertise in tech, and then also it's the audience. The audience for podcasting tends to be a little bit more sophisticated than the audience for YouTube, and thus I think that's why YouTube has built such a large audience and following, is because it's more mainstream than podcasting is.
Look, you see, this is the thing. I to me, podcasting is nothing more than a delivery vehicle. It's like it's
True.
a closure,
It is.
RSS.
Yep.
It's a method
Yep.
of distribution.
We don't
And
disagree.
okay, so I view what I do. It can be a podcast. I mean, every show that we do, because I do my strategy at this point is I do a live. I mean, I've got a live broadcast 24/7 out of my home office. And I've got different audio there. But my primary content production workflow now is we create content on lockergnome.com based on people who are blogging there. And then we do approximately an hour live show on YouTube every day. That video goes on to, I think we use, our primary distribution is Blip TV, because then it converts to, the podcast feed. And so that becomes the podcast. The show becomes the podcast. And, the video that's recorded is, can be watched in video, or it's just it could be just listened to. If you don't want to, watch the entire video, you can listen to it as well. So it stands up. I don't think of it as producing a YouTube video and a podcast. I'm just producing a show. And so I that's my drive. I guess I don't consider a segmentation of the audience based on how they consume the product. I would want them to consume the product in a way that they are most comfortable, and would never want to cut them off on an avenue where they could consume the product. But I guess I don't know if I separate the audiences that way, because they're people who appreciate the show and what we're creating for them.
But here's the thing, Chris. You are one of the few guys that have basically crossed over on both sides. So what I'm really seeing, and this is thousands of content creators who are on, let's say, the what I'm calling let's say the RSS distribution model. That group of people that are on the podcast distribution. I see this huge group. I mean, literally 50, 60,000 content creators that are creating great content on this side of the fence. Yet when they put their stuff on YouTube, they get absolutely no traction. Now they want to have distribution, great traction on YouTube, great traction on Blip, great traction on everywhere else, but it's just not happening. And this is and I tell you, someone figures out how come it's, and you're the guy that is successful on both, and not all content's good. We all know that. But
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, maybe the content.
Yeah.
But why would a show that's getting a million downloads, a million views, has a huge audience on the podcasting side, when they put their content up on YouTube, they get 1,000 views? Why?
Todd,
why is that? We see it. I see it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've got an idea of why that is, and I kind of mentioned it here just a minute ago. I think the folks that watch stuff on YouTube are different than the folks that watch podcasts. I think it's two different types of users and audience, and that's why you see that distinction is, and not all content that's available as podcasts is going to be successful on YouTube because of that difference in user audience. And I think that's
the way that I, in fact, there's something that I broke in WordPress that I need to fix. I had to disable the PodPress plugin because it wreaked havoc, but unfortunately a lot of my data is still sitting inside of the PodPress part of the database.
Chris,
so now some of my legacy posts have no MP3 files associated with them.
Well, that's why you need to switch to PowerPress, and you'll be all squared.
The what?
To PowerPress.
If someone wants to help make it happen to resurface all that great content, awesome. I've always thought it's okay. So I do, as I said, I do this show on YouTube, and it gets distributed all these places. But I don't just keep that live broadcast, which maybe a few people watch, not as much as other things. But I take out of that live program and do seven separate segments discussing seven different topics, or 6 different topics. So each, the issue with podcasting, it's all these topics all combined into one thing. And people that are visiting YouTube may not want to listen to everything. They may just be there to listen to one particular idea, perspective, story, article. And so you've got to think of it that way. And so that's one of the reasons why even over the years, even when we had these long form programs, breaking them down into individual chunks was key. So in doing that, I produce 7 videos a day on at least on YouTube. So there, each one of those things they can browse through them like, oh yeah, there's Chris. Apparently the topic is talking about Foursquare, or is talking about cars, or whatever it happens to be. It's segmented. It's just a part of something larger that they can through an annotation go and discover what is this. Oh, I see. It's a part of a larger show that I can watch, or part of a larger program that I can tune into. So it's making sure that the content is segmented enough that people can, watch these individual clips instead of watching the full long form program. It also helps with search discoverability.
Also,
so I think,
go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I think Chris, the thing that you raise here is really, really fascinating, because I think that's cuts to the core of what YouTube as a platform is trying to struggle with right now. Is that I believe that they want to support more longer form content, more higher quality longer form content, but yet most of their catalog today is all short form content, and I think that's what most users of YouTube expect from content on YouTube, is that it's short form, it's very topic specific, and whether or not YouTube is able to make this transition over into movies and long form TV and maybe longer form, more podcasts like
they
video.
might with Play. They might with Play.
Right.
Google, and I'm not a huge fan. I'm not hidden my opinions on why Google Android has done well in certain ways and not well in other ways. But I think if anything, they're going to try to unify these verticals where they've got the Android ecosystem, they've got the YouTube communities, they've got Google Plus. I don't know if it's going to be successful if they bifurcate that the movies or the TV shows on YouTube over Google Play, because those two would almost seem to be almost like one and the same, where you've got people who are being able to publish. And I mean, not to say that YouTube would necessarily disappear, but I think it may evolve into a point where it disappears or melts into Google Play more than just being YouTube. And it'd be very dangerous for Google to make that move. Depends on how serious they are about capturing the market, or potentially, I don't know where people go if they said, well, I want a YouTube experience. To me, again, the writing's on the wall. It's going to be Google Plus and Google Play and Google this and Google that and Google the other thing.
Well, one thing's for sure, if you look at the Play site, music, books, movies, Android apps, top movie rentals, games, New York Times bestsellers, editor's choice. But there is one thing that's on this menu that's not there. There's no link to YouTube yet, and there's no link to any podcast yet. So, okay.
Why would there need to be a link to podcasts? If an app could be developed, that is the podcast.
That's true. But if people are coming, people are still.
Well, also, also keep in mind too that the Google Play appears to be more of a transactional revenue platform, not a free platform. So until podcasts have some sort of revenue component to it, they're probably not going to be there. And like Chris has been saying, the content off of YouTube is being monetized. So through advertising, I'm not sure that Google Play is playing in the whole ad side of the fence quite yet. So that's kind of, you're dealing a little bit with oil and water there a little bit, trying to combine all those things.
Chris,
so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with that.
Chris,
Google's been, but they've been doing that. They know the future. They know the future of social is going to allow them to access data, which is going to allow them to keep you inside the world of Google. And this is the reason why Google has made some pretty dramatic moves with Google Plus. And really, honestly, I just view it as that they've been throwing spaghetti up against the wall to see what sticks, what doesn't. And they've seen some successes with certain features. A Google Plus Hangout's fun, but is it enough to keep me in Google? I don't know. You talk about monetization. I mean, I'm a YouTube partner. I was pretty much one of the first YouTube partners. And so I was able to monetize my videos years ago. I mean, I'm not going to produce anything that I can't necessarily, draw any revenue from. But putting it, on Google Plus at this point isn't drawing anything. So why would I spend time and attention on Google Plus versus YouTube? So if they want more people to pay attention to Google Plus, they got to give them a reason to. It's more like Blogger. It's more like YouTube. And I see the Blogger product melting into a Google Plus, and I see the YouTube product melting into Google Plus, and all becoming that same social vector. You can upload a video to Google Plus right now versus uploading a video to YouTube.
Right.
Fewer people would see it, or more people would see it, depending on where your audience is watching for your information and your content. So YouTube's going to melt away at some point. I'm fairly confident. Even though it's a very strong brand, it's going to, I think, melt into a Google Plus on an increasing basis, or you're going to see more crossover between Google Plus and the social connectivity and YouTube. And so you'll have the social component of YouTube being fueled by
Google Plus.
Google Plus. And I see more and more of that happening.
So, Chris, you're doing the live stuff on YouTube, and a very limited number of people over there have been invited to actually do live. I know I tried to get on live and basically was ignored. And I think what it boils down to is they're only turning people on live that have good standard YouTube channels. And it goes back to what I was saying before. It cracks me up because we have this great great audience that's consuming the content other places, but it doesn't transform to the YouTube site. So I think maybe what I'm going to try, and this is, it adds a whole nother level of editing, is to try the segment portion. But, that's a lot of work. Will it be worth the return? I don't know, because I look at time spent versus dollars earned, and, YouTube's never sent me a check. But, I get a check every show for what I do on the podcasting side. So it is an interesting, it's an interesting dilemma. But what do you think? Do you think they're going to open the live stuff up more?
Nope.
Really? You think they're never going to open it up and just let any willy-nilly person use it?
Think about that. There have been other live streaming services that have gotten busted and sued because content creators were publishing stuff that they shouldn't have been publishing.
Okay, well, that agreed.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, that agreed. But at the same point, do you think they're going to start ramping up higher numbers then?
Nope. I think they're it's an experiment, and at some point in the future, the live product may it may disappear. I think it was an experimentation. I don't know how long YouTube's going to be doing live because of that fact. Their belly is exposed, and all it takes is for one person to ruin it for everybody. It's not even a matter of trust. I mean, I inadvertently do something, and suddenly now YouTube's getting sued for billions of dollars because someone rebroadcast the content in a live capacity and that they didn't stop it. So until they have the ability to track that in a live way, I just don't see YouTube doing a lot more live products because of the potential risk for lawsuits.
Yeah,
they've got to have that handled.
The truth about live is the fact that you're really not going to pick up huge followings doing live programming, for one thing. I mean, it does have some advantages, but Chris, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a huge risk for any company to do live content unless it's very much controlled by the company and having some level of confidence that the content creator isn't going to do the whole copyright infringement thing. So I think it's definitely going to hold back live. But I do think that live has a place in the picture here going forward, just like what we're doing today here. But it's only going to be a small subset of the overall audience for content like this as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out, with them. Anyway.
Well, one thing about the live, I find it ends to the means. The live is fun to do. And, usually when I'm doing live, it's at some weird hour, 8 o'clock at night, Honolulu Standard Time, while the rest of the country's asleep. So for me, the live is more of a its ability to have a little bit of fun with some folks online, but at the same time capture the video and then put it up for distribution. And I think that's from my standpoint. If you're going to be recording it, you might as well be live. There's no reason not to be.
Well, that's what I do. Everything's live to tape.
Yeah.
I generally don't do any video editing.
Yeah, and it's same with me. And but some people get wrapped around the axle and want to. It is interesting though that you said you don't think that they're going to expand the live presence. Now, my rationale would have been if they're going to try to build more. I don't know. I think that they're trying to have that long form content more. Then if they can't buy it from the studios and, it makes it just traditional TV because no one wants any more traditional TV.
Google Play.
But Google Play is where you're going to get the TV stuff. Yeah.
It's not that YouTube can't handle long form content. They can, and they do. It's, where are people going to digest that long form content? Are they going to sit in front of the computer and watch
YouTube.
for an hour?
It's not going to be on YouTube.
Well, or are they going to watch on? I mean, I don't care where the video is as long as I can get to it, right?
Right.
So I don't care if I'm sitting on my tablet computer here.
Yep.
I mean, I can take it anywhere. I can watch it anywhere. I'm not just stationed in front of a computer screen,
Yep.
Looking at a video and watching every one of my body parts fall asleep in the process. That it's not the medium, it's the message that will ultimately matter.
As my daughter says, her television is her laptop. She doesn't have a TV. She's 22, and it's, her definition of TV is Hulu Plus and anything else she can get online. She doesn't have a cable subscription per se. And we did the cable cut for a year here, and then I went off to CES and came back, and my wife had the cable turned back on. It was just one of those things that, she had enough and she wanted to be able to watch her Japanese programming and some other things that she could not get online as much as she tried. So I think we're still a ways away, but I was quite happy with the cable cut, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Todd, and I see the same thing. I've got a 22-year-old daughter who I know is a cable never. That's the new term to describe it, is that there's this whole generation coming up that is never going to connect to cable. So I think it's a big, kind of a longer term concern for the cable industry. But I mean, all those kids are going, just like you said, their TV is their laptop or their Slate device.
Right.
And they're not going to connect to a Comcast anytime soon. It's just way too expensive, and it's not the kind of content that they generally like to consume anyway.
But are we becoming a total ADD society? And with the short form content and attention span of 10 minutes, I see it in email. If I send an email with more than 2 sentences in it, then, they reply to the first sentence and don't even read the second sentence. So I have to send emails now in like Twitter style. I have to send 140 characters or less, or they don't, they don't read the whole. It drives me insane.
Yeah. No, I've seen the same thing. Yeah.
It's easier than, if that's the problem. I always, if there's a laundry list of things to be noticed, I'll always do 1, 2, 3, so that I see step 1, step 2, step 3.
They might get to step 2 if you're lucky. Yeah, I do the same thing.
Point 1, point 2, point 3.
Yeah, sometimes they'll read all of them. Sometimes. The younger the person is, the more they don't.
Yeah, that's actually not a really great sign of the future. I hate to say it, but
it's not.
It's this whole ADD thing. It's an attention deficit disorder. People can't focus on things anymore, like when we were younger. I guess we're showing our age now, guys.
Well, it's just like when we do campaign stuff. It's the campaign instructions are generally pretty long and pretty monotonous, and it sucks. I have to put all these. You shall, you will, you'll do this. It just, it drives me crazy. It'd be much easier to say, just do it. But I have one, but if I don't, then it says, well, you never told me to do that. Well, yes, point 4 that you signed initial to, it said that you had to do that. And they go back and they're like, oh, I didn't read that. But they put a checkbox beside it. It's interesting. Well, now I guess we can see how much activity we do on Google. And I looked at this and I'm kind of like, okay, I'm really not sure here what their purpose is. Is this an attempt by them to make us feel a little bit better about the data they're collecting? Have any of you checked
What
out
do you
the
mean?
the new feature, the new account activity? Tells you how many emails you've sent, how many Google searches you've done. Basically,
It's pointless data right now.
yeah, I think.
Honestly, it's not helpful at all.
But what
For
was
what they're surfacing and how they're surfacing it, it's pointless.
But why did they do it? The question that's the question. Why? What was their purpose here, or is just some 2% program that someone worked on and they're experimenting with it?
I think they're trying to surface data, although I question where, I guess they're surfacing it in the best way they can for average people, but they just need to be. I would like to see a lot more of the data collected, but I guess it's a starting point.
That's true. It is a, I guess, like you said, a starting point. I log in and look at it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this is a nice report. Something I'll look at maybe once every 6 months. All right, moving topics then. Hey, the folks over at Huffington Post, the bloggers over there that had filed the suit with AOL, they had it dismissed. Basically, the judge threw them out on their ear. And so 9,000 unpaid Huffington bloggers are just that. They remain 9,000 unpaid Huffington Post bloggers. And, I hate to say it, but what did they expect? Let's be honest. What did they expect? They were over there and they knew they were contributing for free.
Don't look at me.
Yeah.
And I pay my bloggers, and if someone comes in and I don't know what their background is, and if they want to blog for me, sometimes I'll have folks do a month worth of blogging on the site. It's for free, and then if I think they're good, I can leave them on. But have we gotten into a society now? And I see this a lot. I got an email. Probably you get these all the time too, Chris. I get an email from someone. Hey, we'll give you this if you do this, and they'll it equates. And it's like, Chris, you're drinking a cup of coffee there. I don't know if you're still drinking Pete's or not, but you're essentially it's the I call it the coffee cup a cup of coffee syndrome. They give you a product worth the price of a cup of coffee and want you to sell your soul for the price of doing so. They want you to write up a review, and it is kind of an ironic thing that the companies have figured out now that they can basically buy off content creators with a cup of coffee. And
yeah, it doesn't work for me so much.
Yeah, and I'm at the point too where if a company reaches out, I'm like, hey, if you want to get exposure to my audience, then why don't you advertise on the site or become an advertiser for the show? And it's pretty amazing. They go away pretty quickly. So
it's because they didn't get it for free. Yeah.
And it's the same thing about companies taking bloggers and flying them across the country and then wine and dining them and having them write about stuff. And sometimes there's a good trade-off in that, but at the same point, I think that a lot of content creators are cutting themselves short. And this just goes right back to this Huffington Post thing. You had 9,000 unpaid bloggers who all of a sudden figured out that, oh, my content was worth something. Someone made something on the back of me, and maybe those 9,000 unpaid bloggers won't be the folks that'll be accepting cups of coffee to sell their soul on their own blogs. If anything comes of this, I hope that does.
Well, I think at the time, those bloggers knew that they were going to get something out of it, and that was exposure to the huge audience. And now they saw where there was, like I say, that there was value there, and they all want a piece of it now. It's really just that simple. It's just it's greed. It's not that they're really entitled to anything. I'm sure that they were under some sort of an agreement that said that they weren't entitled to anything like this, so they're just going to push the issue.
And Chris, I know that you've basically what you do is you've got a great audience, and to get exposure to the audience, companies need to pony up to the bar and pay to have that exposure. And there's stuff I'm sure you promote that you like and love. You do it every day, but you're not doing it because someone's asked you to do it.
No, it's one of the reasons why we launched. Well, just another one of the reasons I had launched a kind of a different program for. I guess it was kind of a new way of doing it, but I launched a program a couple months ago called Nomies, which was meant to address a certain part of the audience that I had. They were asking for promotion, they were asking for help, and I thought, why not do it in such a way that people could basically pay for the exposure or pay for the assistance.
Right. That makes sense. And you made a complete separate program for that.
Oh yeah. I it's kind of like one and the same, but they're also separate.
Right.
So it's more, even though the value is there for any community member who wants to join, certainly the value of it is really in, giving them access to the things they want access to, and in doing so at an affordable rate for them and for me.
Well, that makes sense. That's an interesting move. I have to think
paid
about.
Off.
Well, I hope it has.
It already has paid off, so it works. It's been a good move, I would say.
Well, you never know what's going to come from a conversation, do you, Rob? You're like, that makes sense.
That's right. That's an interesting idea. Yeah,
that's true. There's a whole bunch of people that are going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their next part of their lives, because Yahoo is about ready to do another round of layoffs here. They're saying they're going to lay off around 14,000 additional employees. And I don't know, how big is Yahoo? Does that even make a dent in their total number of folks? But another 14,000 seems like a pretty big number.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty big number, but it's probably, I don't know, 20% of their employment base, probably. I don't know.
And to be honest with you, they've done it to themselves. They made themselves largely irrelevant. I don't, be honest with you, I don't remember the last time. I do remember the last time I was on Yahoo. I was on Yahoo about 3 weeks ago to get to unsubscribe from a group over there that I was getting a lot of spam in. But, they just don't have products. They've really lost the ball. It's hard to believe that they've come and fell so far. It's kind of like MySpace. I kind of equate Yahoo to MySpace at this point.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still get a lot of traffic, but, Chris, do you use Yahoo at all?
Flickr, maybe.
Yeah, maybe still. Flickr.
Kind of.
Yeah, I don't use it at all. I don't do anything with anything that Yahoo does.
So, Rob, earlier in the week, Comcast made this announcement about their apps in the Xbox, and how they were going to basically allow anyone that has an Xbox in their home on Comcast to not go against their bandwidth quota on a monthly basis and any content that they get through the Comcast pay-per-view app. And I thought, that was pretty cool. But they've come under a little heat as that potentially being an antitrust issue. And the folks at Netflix and other folks are like, hey, if you're going to let, what's fair is fair. So I don't know where this is going to go. Maybe a potential lawsuit, but I am glad to see that Xbox is finally starting to roll out some of these channels.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dilemma. I mean, spoken from a non-official stance here, but the whole concept of a lot of folks have been complaining for a long time about being worried about their bandwidth caps on Comcast for streaming video, and this was an effort, I guess, from what I can tell, and I certainly wasn't involved in it, to kind of mitigate that issue, right? As if you stream too much, you're going to hit your cap and you're going to have a problem. You're going to get your account shut down. So I guess there is an advantage, to having this type of scenario. Now I know it kind of goes against this whole network neutrality concept. But if we want to stream and have streaming television and not use cable as much, I can see some advantages to having this part of the bandwidth kind of waived from that cap. But but it does throw up some red flags, in other areas, and I guess that's really where the controversy comes up.
Having talked recently to Time Warner and a major radio network, the way they do business and the way they ingest content is a completely different animal than what we're used to on the web. And, if you want to, sadly, if you want to play with those guys, you have to be the size of Microsoft to be able to play with them. Otherwise, they come out with all kinds of insane demands. I'm not even going to go into, go ahead and try to feed video into Time Warner or try to feed audio into a national radio syndication system. They have just, boy, the barrier to entry is nearly impossible. But thank God for the internet.
It's complex, that's for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, I really don't have too many other topics. Did you guys see anything this past week that really tweaked you and you got all hot and bothered about, or?
No, I'm already tweaked.
Chris, I think you probably hold the record for having the longest ongoing live show. It amazes me. I pop over to your site from time to time, and there's 500 people in the chat window, and they're looking at your chair, your empty chair. So, you've got a hard,
famous chair.
I keep waiting to see if there's going to be like a stripper or something like that makes an impromptu appearance at your table. It just amazes me. You got a hardcore audience.
Yeah, sometimes I bring strippers in here. When I'm doing work on the walls, paint strippers. That's really the only kind of strippers around here.
So you definitely have a dedicated audience, and that that's hard one. But I'm glad to see what is this a different view? Are we looking basically the view that we normally see is the side view? Are you because I'm looking here at the camera and I guess I'm not used to this view from going to your live site.
This view is just, I've got a camera sitting on top of my one of my primary monitors.
All right. Yeah, I'm getting ready to do a studio restructure here, and I've been taking notes from everyone's layouts and trying to figure out which way I'm going to go. The shelving and stuff back here is going to depart the scene and end up on the street here in the next couple of months, and trying to come up with a new design is not easy.
I'm sure.
I don't know about you, but I'm dealing with a limited amount of space. I wish I could have a Leo studio, but I don't have a cool $1 million laying around to build a studio like that. Pretty amazing way. Have you been to the cottage? Not the cottage, but the new studio. Have you been up and seen it?
I've watched sometimes, I guess. I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, Rob, have you been up to see it yet?
Yeah. I was there last summer for his grand opening.
So it's you keep watching what he's doing, and everyone continues to beat the path forward on creating content and being creative. It's a pretty exciting time. So, Chris, keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for the chat today, Rob. Anything news on your side?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask Chris something. Is there any news on your Gnomedex conference and event? I mean,
everyone keeps asking.
Okay.
I guess someone posted it on the on a Wikipedia page, and I'm like, dude, really? No, there's no news, so to speak, at least at this point in time. I've been really busy with either the Nomies, and I've also been busy, starting to re-engage, businesses on a level that's been different than I had been engaging them for a number of years. So it's just been taking a lot of time away. I suppose it's always possible, with enough money, anything's possible.
It's not cheap to do those events, is it?
No,
it's not.
And the level amount of work is just, I can't even imagine. It's like half a year's worth of work to put on something like that.
It takes time.
It does.
So with enough people who are interested and enough money and enough value, it's possible. But until all those things happen at the same time, I'm not going to be paying attention to it. It's fine to sleep right now. It's asleep.
So, well, I guess then that means potentially no gnome decks this year. So that's what I read from those tea leaves.
So,
There wasn't really
Todd,
last year.
I understand. I know there wasn't one last year.
There kind of was,
Todd,
but it wasn't really that.
Sure. Rob, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that there seems to be a renewed vigor around blog world for podcasters, and I just wanted to just kind of mention that back in New York City on June 5th through the 7th. And it appears, and there's been an announcement that there's going to be a name change to Blog World that's going to be more all-encompassing to podcasters and bloggers and web TV creators. So it's going to be kind of an interesting shift. They haven't decided yet what the actual name of the event's going to be, but based on what I've heard so far from folks kind of inside the podcast community, there's a kind of a renewed kind of vigor around this event to try and create some community for podcasters again. If you think back to the early days of podcasting where this community was pretty tight and people stayed in contact and worked together, I think we've kind of lost a little bit of that. But here, starting in June, there's going to be a renewed focus on podcasting at that particular event. And then as it moves out to the West Coast, there's going to be a completely new event that will focus on, like I said, podcasters, bloggers, and web TV creators, which would include, like YouTubers and those kind of content providers as well. So
Yeah, well,
I just wanted to mention that.
How do I say this? Yeah, I was talking with Rick, and actually had a conference call with him earlier this week, and then talking with Cliff. I actually, I have to be careful what I say because I know more than what they've announced. And I think they did a podcast on it, but definitely the name changes. The name change is coming, and then the 3 tenets of the new focus. Rick has realized that he's got to call it what it is, and then there's going to be I think what the idea he's come up with is a good one, and Cliff is working the tracks. I think they've got 24 tracks for New York worked up. I think the big shocker is yet to come. I can't say what the announcement is, but I think Rick is got a plan, and I think it'll take people by surprise. And when they do announce the next round of announcements, I think that people will be surprised. I think people go, they're gonna scratch their chin for a few minutes, but I think they will. They'll warm up to it. So we'll see when that second part of the announcement's made. I think that's pending. I think there's some, and it may come out in the next couple of weeks. But I think he's on the right track, and we'll see what happens. I'll probably go to New York just to check the show out and see where they have it. But basically, we've told Rick, you lost the community. You lost them from. There's on the front page of Blog World, there was no, luminaries from the new media side. It was mostly blogging. So I think he's woke up to figured out, hey, we've got to get the community back. And I think Cliff is the right guy to bring it back. And Cliff is pretty neutral, and I like that. So we've got a guy that's working the sessions and stuff that doesn't have a agenda per se. And I told Cliff, do what you think is right and follow your heart, and just remember, everyone has an agenda, and as long as you stay true to what you think is going to make work, it'll be a great event. And I think Cliff is the perfect guy to be organizing the sessions for the podcasting portion of the track, at least. So we'll see what happens.
Cliff is living up to his name, the podcast answer man, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Yep. So, Chris, I don't know. Had you been to a Blog World in recent times?
Yeah, I did streaming at the New York one, the last New York one. I can't remember how long ago, months and months and months and months ago. And then I did that on the floor, and then I sat with. What did I do? Oh, I was a part of the ending keynote session with Andrew Breitbart, Chris Brogan, and a couple other people. And boy, that was that was I did what I needed to do, and a lot of people weren't happy with some of the panelists who were there. But I don't think I upset anybody, so I'm happy to say that.
And I didn't see that. I'll have to go pull that.
Yeah, it was. There were some awkward moments. There were definitely some awkward moments.
Not that there was any polarizing figures on that panel at all.
But the funny thing is, I thought I was going to be the most awkward, and no, I was actually normal.
That's funny. And that's saying something when Chris says I was the normal one.
Well, that definitely sounds like an unusual combination of people on that panel. Andrew's no longer on this earth with us.
Yeah,
but,
it's too bad. It really is. And, you don't like to see anybody go out like that. But, it happens. Hey, one thing, Rob, just so that you do know, Apple has turned up the Apple Cart. They completely have revamped the RSS spec. And I don't know if you've read to some of the stuff that they've added. Angela's going to email you, but we're going to have a new rev on PowerPress and probably next week because of these new changes. They've got some pretty interesting stuff they're doing there, and I'm hoping that you guys will adapt at least one or two of the new features. So go through and read the namespace spec and look at what they've added, specifically what they've added to the namespace.
So I know that they added larger cover art, 1200 by 1200 for the Apple TV product.
Right.
So I heard a lot about that this week. I think the only danger there with that is that in a lot of the podcast software and clients, things like that, that cover art is resized to pretty small sizes. I mean, it can get down on the phone or in certain places down to as small as 75 pixels square.
Right.
And to go from 1200 down to 75 is that's a lot of resizing, and it can cause an image to break up and be pixelated at smaller sizes. So I think it's kind of an interesting move that everybody's moving that way, and Apple's pushing for that for just their Apple TV, because that's really the only place where it really needs to be that big.
Well, it's the Retina display on the iPad is where they're pushing
that's
for.
Part of it, but they don't really need to have it that big even there. I mean, that seems a little over the top.
Well, I think they definitely have
opinion anyway.
They definitely have a plan, but if you look at some of the stuff in the namespace that they've added, there's some new data calls there that could be very, very dangerous, and there's some stuff in there that, if implemented, could be very cool too from most content creators. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into them here at this point.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
No. We'll announce them next week. But he's been coding ever since, when we have to do an update, it's normally like a day's worth of code, but he's got, 3 or 4 days in now to make these changes. And there's some significant stuff there. And it's specifically in the namespace. If you guys don't read the namespace, all their namespace tags, you won't have to worry, but there's some new ones, specifically some new namespace tags that we're implementing.
So what would you say is the biggest one of all of them that you're either concerned about or you see opportunity with?
The ability to basically have a persistent number one listed episode in your iTunes directory. So there's a new flag that you can make the most persistent. You can have a listing that always is number one in the list.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest changes. And I think you can actually have 3 persistent, 1, 2, and 3 persistent at the very top of your listing at all times. And
because it does kind of seem like in like on the iPad and things like that Apple's kind of moving away from subscriptions with podcasting. It's more of an on-demand thing.
Yeah, and I think it's all synonymous at this point. The bandwidth is such, unless a person has a huge, video is still tricky, but the audio part, yeah, people can just click play and play it wherever they're at. But the only problem with the iPad still and the iPhone today is there's no way to put a marker. If you don't listen to the whole thing and you leave, you have to find your spot. It doesn't take over where it left off. So that's still a
Really? It's always done it for me.
I think if you start playing something and you close it and then you come back, and it generally doesn't hold the spot, especially if
I've never had that problem.
But if but do you download or do you actually play live?
No, I'm not playing anything live over like iTunes or anything like that. The only, well, then again, if people ask us all the time, what podcast do you subscribe to? Honestly, I only subscribe to one. And it isn't mine, but I only subscribe to one. Everything else I get on demand.
Right.
I only subscribe to one. This American Life. That's it.
And I think most people now, well, we see a mix. It's probably 50-50. People are actually subscribed and downloading, and then there's the other part that does it on demand. But the biggest complaint we always get back is if they're not subscribed and they're not downloading, for some reason it has a tendency to lose its place. Maybe it's maybe some shows it happens, some shows it doesn't. I don't know, but that's the biggest complaint we seem to get out of the iPhone, iPad folks. So, okay.
Hey guys, so
let's go ahead, Rob.
One more quick question.
Sure.
Chris, as you look back to 2005 and fast forward to today, what would be your kind of observation of what's happened to podcasting and kind of where you think it's going to go, the next 3 or 4 years? I'm just curious.
Well, I think it's already gone. I mean, it's still there, but it's, you're even kind of explain what Apple's doing with it. At this point, even changing, the mechanisms and namespaces, by which iTunes is going to process those feeds. YouTube is where people are publishing their video. If they have a show, they're on YouTube. They're not really thinking about.
But it's not a platform for audio, though. It's not a platform for audio, and that's the piece that podcasting is probably the strongest in, is the audio side.
Yeah, sure, I guess. I listen to video over audio. I listen to audio with video. I just don't watch the video.
I think I
can listen to it. It's not like the audio stops working if I'm not watching the video.
There's definitely
Go ahead. Honestly, I see people on an increasing basis, not going through these processes that are, a headache to manage. That is, podcasting it's a process, but it's for all the years it's been around, it's easy-ish. But YouTube is just the bigger point of velocity, if only because of the social engagement that's around it. And then you look at Google Plus, Google's pretty much owning that content sphere. As far as anybody's concerned, the idea of podcasting, I think, is antiquated at this point.
But the thing is, though, Chris, that's a misnomer, because the numbers continue to dramatically increase.
Really?
Absolutely. The numbers are higher than they've ever been, and the actual rate of adoption is higher than it's ever been, because there's so many different devices in which you can get the content. We're tracking over 100. We're tracking 150 different devices that are able to access the content. Now, they're accessing it a multitude of ways. Not everyone is subscribing and downloading. They're going to their device, they're going to an app, so they're getting the content a variety of different ways. They're not necessarily subscribed and downloading and then listening after. There's still that segment of people that do that, but the majority of it is more click, I'm playing it, and really what it is, it's being delivered via a live stream. It's still coming from a downloaded file. So from that standpoint, they're doing more YouTube-ish behavior and being able to click on demand. But again, it goes back to that discussion we were having earlier. There is a huge segment that are delivering millions and millions of downloads that are getting no traction on YouTube. So there is definitely, at least in my opinion, and maybe Rob's too, two distinct audiences.
Yep.
Absolutely two distinct.
I don't know if I see as two distinct audiences, honestly.
But you have you have a successful YouTube channel, because like I said, you're
what
one
I
of
have is content that what I have is content that people want to watch or listen to.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Okay, but
whether it's YouTube, quote unquote podcast, a video file, an embed, ultimately it's that people want to get to the content. They don't care how they get to the content. They want to get to the content.
But you're one of it.
And I do not see any more people jumping aboard the quote unquote podcast train when it's just as easy to go to Google Plus and upload a video, to go to Facebook and upload a video, or to go to freaking YouTube and upload a video.
But you're one of a handful. I'm literally a handful of content creators that have been successful on both sides. There is very few people that are successful on both sides of the delivery mechanism.
Because I think of it as content.
I understand that. But the thing is, you think of it as content. I think of my content as content. But I guarantee you, if I take this content and when it goes up in my feed and I know what the numbers of downloads and the number of access and the number of people that are subscribed to it, if I put this same content on YouTube, it gets no traction. But it goes back to the...
If I had... and honestly, I mean, we do have adoption on iTunes. I probably don't watch that content as closely because I get feedback. People email me and they say, Chris, I listened to X or I watched Y. I don't care how they discovered it. It's that they discovered it. So if more people were coming in from one resource, I'd certainly be paying attention there more than anywhere else. This is one of the reasons why people, tend to go towards Facebook versus, say, Google Plus, in terms of engaging their audience or their community or friends or anything like that. It's not the medium, it's the message. And I just don't see the medium of podcasting getting any stronger or gaining adoption at this rate where it's inherently not social.
It's inherently doing better than it's ever done. So think what you want.
According to what?
Well, I think we're really talking about two different types of audiences here, and I think that's the core distinction. I think that the podcast audience tends to be a little older, and the audience that follows YouTube tends to be a little younger. So I think what we have going on here is a little bit of a generational issue. I think is what's keeping these things separate.
I don't know. I don't know.
We lost Chris's video.
Guess I have on YouTube. If I look at my analytics, hang on, give me a second. Give me a second.
But the thing is, but the thing is, I think what Chris is not realizing is he's got a great adoption on both sides, but for the majority of podcasters, it's not that case, And
so if I look at my demographics on YouTube, and here's the nice thing, all of my content lives on indefinitely on YouTube versus the content that lives on indefinitely. Not indefinitely, other than through a blog post in a podcast. So a lot of that older form content really no longer, it exists, it kind of exists, but iTunes only gives me the ability to service the past 15 quote unquote episodes. My blog posts where the content lives separately lives on. Now I'll tell you, most of my audience is male. 89% of my audience on YouTube is male. It skews 35 to 44 and 45 to 54. And then it goes 25 to 34, 55 to 64, 18 to 24. So most of my audience is about right around my age. And I'm not young. I'm not necessarily old. I'm right in the middle. So I don't believe that it's a generational thing at all. Because the statistics on YouTube would tell me just the opposite. It would tell me that most of my audience is older, not younger.
So look at this perspective, Chris.
Interesting.
Explain this one. We went to CES. I'm going to use 2011 data points. We went to CES in 2011. We did 270 interviews, all short format, nothing longer than maybe 7 minutes max. That content delivered through a traditional podcast distribution model where it went into Roku, Boxy, Samsung, Google TV, went into everything, including YouTube, received about 39 million total views of those 270 videos. When we pulled out the YouTube numbers, we did less than 100,000 views of that same content on YouTube. So we're sitting here scratching our head. How come we've got 39 million views being distributed through all these other models, but we only got 100,000 on YouTube? For the life of us, we can't figure it out. I mean, to this day. And guess what? The 2012 traffic, which is close to 300 interviews, is trending the exact same way. And now it's getting a combination of web, probably 50 to 55% is web. And then the rest of that distribution is coming from iTunes, from Zune, coming from BlackBerry, coming, and it's to be honest, for the life of me, we can't figure it out. But we know where we're getting our check from. We're not getting a check from YouTube. Right. So, I wish someone just think about this over the next week, Chris, and try to figure out why, and just go and look through. And we're not talking about the Callies of the world, because Callie's a good crossover case, and so are your top content creators. But why do we have content creators who are getting huge numbers comparable to your numbers on YouTube on their podcast side, but they will never get that on their YouTube side?
Distribution channels.
But they distribute the same place.
No. It depends on who's picking it up. Like, I could have the same content on iTunes and not track well at all.
Right.
Or seemingly not track well at all. It depends on where it's being distributed.
Okay, so if they're distributing and if they're getting their content, these groups that are doing very well, they're getting distributed into every device, into every platform, but yet they don't track on YouTube. So what's the difference on the YouTube distribution?
It's easier. I mean, I couldn't even tell you my stuff's I know my stuff's being distributed in iTunes. I couldn't tell you if it's connected, on a Roku or Boxy or any one of these platforms. I couldn't tell you.
But you distribute your stuff to Facebook. Are you saying that where people are picking it up and putting it? Well, excuse me. You're putting it up on YouTube. Are you saying once it's up on YouTube, they're taking the embed and putting it somewhere? Is that how you're getting distribution on YouTube?
No, you get distribution on YouTube. It's just there. Distribution's a model. It's not the audience. If you're not creating something that people are generally searching for there, then it's not going to pick up. Or if your audience isn't there, you're just not going to be paying much attention to it. If you don't want to grow your audience there, you wouldn't be paying attention to it. This is the reason why, if you've got success in these other channels, you should absolutely keep growing in that direction. If there's a model for it, when there's I don't do anything for free. I can't do anything for free. So I've got to pay attention to what's going to get me the highest amount of velocity with the least amount of effort.
I think
that's a smart way to grow.
I understand it, but I think what we're trying to figure out is why there isn't crossover. I think that's what Rob and I are sitting there trying to figure out.
You're not doing anything with community there. Are you doing anything with community other than posting a video?
With the community on YouTube.
Yes.
Okay, but
Are
Chris,
you doing anything?
That doesn't, that's all good and everything, but that doesn't necessarily translate, if you look at what Todd is saying, to overall traffic, right? As far as the downloads now, we may be talking apples and oranges here when it comes to actual views versus downloads. So I think that could be where there's a difference here, and I'm not quite sure.
So if we equate it all to views, that's ultimately what it is, views or listens. I guess from my perspective is when I go on YouTube, there is no community that I guess I don't understand where the community is on YouTube, because there's really there's Google Plus, but there's, besides commenting on someone's YouTube video, there's really I've never seen community
or following
tubes.
A channel, right?
Or following a channel. Yeah. So what do you classify as community on YouTube then, Chris? Because I'm curious here.
People who want to subscribe to your content. People who want to watch your content. People who want to follow your content. People who want to share your content. And I think there's a bigger value in someone who's an active engager than there is just a workaday listener or viewer.
Right.
And that's where podcasting falls short. I mean, yeah, you're able to get the
Well,
views, but television gets views. That doesn't mean that it's doing it the right way. You know, I would rather have someone come up to me and say, Chris, I don't watch all your videos. That's fine. At least they know I do videos.
Right.
Well, certainly, Chris, with YouTube content, it's much easier to share that with other people on the social platforms
That's true.
than it is to share a podcast per se. So
That's true.
I definitely agree on that side. It has a much stronger kind of viral component to it. I don't necessarily agree with the whole community part to it, because I think that a podcast can have a strong community too. It's different than what you're talking about. It's
Really?
less viral.
I really? I've
Sure.
very rarely seen podcasts have strong community support, at least without any kind of live element or any kind of really true engagement beyond just listening. A passive listener it's potentially 80% of your audience. 80% of the people who are consuming whatever you're throwing out there they're going to do it, and they're going to lurk, and they're important, but it's difficult to know whether or not you're actually striking a chord with them. That's why that 20% is very important to pay attention to.
I think I would classify the shows that are very successful, that are doing in the millions of views, listens, have highly engaged audiences. The shows that are small,
Well, that's very.
they're going to be small no matter what, just based on content and engagement. But again, you've got these huge shows that that don't make the crossover, and it's a question that comes up on my side every week. How come I'm not getting traction here? Got this great audience there. And it's, I don't know if there's any secret sauce.
You can't migrate community.
No,
you can't expect that. Imagine if
they're not trying to.
If I deleted all my YouTube videos and say, okay, now in order to watch all my videos, you got to go over to Vimeo.
But they don't.
It's not going to happen.
They're not trying to migrate. They're trying to gain more. Basically what they have this set group that's getting it a certain way. Obviously, if they get on YouTube, they're going to attract hopefully another segment of audience that's consuming it there. There may be a little crossover, but we wouldn't expect it to be too much. So the question is why, ultimately is, I think, and what we're trying to get to is there has not been many podcasters be successful YouTubers. It just doesn't happen. It's very, I mean, I can count them on.
It's either one or the other.
One or the other. One or the other.
Yeah.
And this is the dilemma we've tried to figure out why. And a case in point, I think that my regular show, which has a huge following, there's no following on YouTube. So, why? I don't know. I'm happy that I've got this great audience. Don't get me wrong, on the other side of the fence. But it's always baffled me why there hasn't been the pickup on the other side. And I guess maybe it's something we're not going to be able to figure out anytime soon, Rob. And Chris, I guess maybe, as you think about this,
we can speculate
why. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's where you first establish yourself.
No.
Yeah. Well, actually, if you look at Chris, I mean, he's been a podcaster before he was a YouTuber. So, I mean, but I think, Chris, you put a lot more of your focus on YouTube now than you do with your podcast too. So I think it's about focus as well, I think.
But what podcast? The podcast is the show. I concentrate on the show. I concentrate on the content.
Right.
No, but I understand that, Chris.
And
but I think what we're seeing actually play out on the marketplace is that there is a difference between those two things, and that the folks that focus on podcasting tend to have better chance of succeeding at that. It's difficult for people to do both, I think, is where we're really, I think, what we're getting down to here.
Because there's definitely, I see 11,000 content creator stats, and I see it, and you go look at where they have their content on they have it on YouTube or Vimeo or someplace like that, and they're dead, and you see these huge numbers on the other side, and like, why? So it is kind of a weird thing. I guess we're just going to have to continue to explore this and see where it's at. And I agree, it's all about the content. It should be all about the content.
No, I don't think there's any question that's the core of this too, is that it should play well in both places.
Yeah. And And again, it's if you focus on the content, that's the important thing. And it just is weird why there isn't the crossover. We are way, way long. So thanks, guys. Chris, I know you dropped up on video, but definitely everyone check Chris out. Of course, you want to go over to lockergnome.com. Check it out. Of course, just Google Chris Pirillo as well. You'll find him at the top of the Google search. And check out his great content. And, of course, Rob, you're over at robgreenlee.com. And, of course, if anyone has any problems on their podcast and trying to get it on Zune, you want to send Rob an email at rob@zune.net. Hey, you know what, Rob? I did see that on the Windows 8 version that the Zune Marketplace is right there front and center on the menu. So that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I've been posting a lot of my old Web Talk Radio shows to my webtalkradio.com site, that I have back up online again. Shows going back to 1999 if you want to go do a little time traveling back to the .com, the early .com days. It's a fun journey to go back and listen to that stuff and what the hot things that were going on the web back in 2004, 2005.
That is like hardcore, Rob. You're going back and putting that stuff up. That's wow. Are you doing that more of a self-satisfaction thing, or are you it's
I just want it to live on. I think that back in the early days of this stuff, a lot of the topics that we talked about on the show have either played out or not.
Yeah.
The show that I did back then was about the future of the internet and the web.
Right.
And I think that some of the guests, I had some really high level guests back there, like the creator of Wikipedia and guys from pets.com and folks from the early days of Amazon.com and Microsoft, and it's fun sometimes just to go back and kind of listen to what was talked about back then and to help have a little context to where we are today. Because I think a lot of the younger folks that are coming up in the technology sector don't really have a good understanding of the history of where we've came with all these things, and a lot of things that we see now and think of as new are really not. They're kind of reformulated based on lessons that came from the past. So anyway, that was part of the reason. And it's also just fun to put that stuff up about, again. And I have been thinking about, well, if I would do a show again, would I do another Web Talk Radio and try and do the same kind of thing? And I've been thinking more and more about maybe turning that thing back on again.
Well, that's cool. Well, I tell you, you guys can check that out at webtalkradio.com and see where we were and where we're going, I guess. Listen to this show, see where we're going. But hey, definitely, everyone, thanks for hanging out. Of course, my name is Todd Cochrane. You can reach me here at Geek News Central. Whoops, flipped the wrong button. And if you want to, you can Twitter me at Geek News. Email is real easy as well, geeknews@gmail.com, geeknews@gmail.com. And, of course, our hotline is open 24 hours a day at 619-342-7365 if you want to call in and leave comments on this. But, yeah, this one may have to be put in 2 segments because the download's going to be massive.
That's true. We have got a long time.
We've been a long time, and we went well over an hour. So, guys, thanks, and thanks for hanging out. And Chris, we'll have to do this again, and I'll let you see if you can ponder and figure out what us podcasters are doing wrong on the YouTube side.
You're not doing anything wrong. You're doing things different.
Yeah, that's the key. But we want to do things different so that we still get more traction on YouTube. That's the key.
No worries.
All right, guys, take care.
All right.
Thanks. Aloha.